Welcome back, everyone. I wanted to mention to Brian that I had my first day experience of first day value with my smartphone. I received 2 messages. One of them was that I missed the dentist, which was a very positive thing for me. And the second was that my checking account was overdrawn, so my net day value is a wash. Our next panel is how connectivity impacts our ability to get where we want, when we want. Let me introduce the panelists. Jessie Feller is the moderator. Jessie is the managing director of Meeting of the Minds. Jessie oversees the annual Meeting of the Minds conference as focused on urban sustainability, innovation, and connected technology. Her panelists are Ben Stanley, Global Automotive Leader, IBM Institute of Business Value. Ben leads the development of research and strategy for Automotive. And Michael Samoza, co-founder and CEO of GottaPark. Michael was inspired to start GottaPark after realizing he was spending more time parking than commuting. Jessie, the panel's all yours.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. We have a fantastic panel lined up for you to really zoom in on how all of these trends are impacting the consumer and the individual. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how all of this is impacting how consumers get where they want when they want. So that's our theme for today. Again, I'm Jessie Feller, Managing Director of Meeting of the Minds. We're a nonprofit based in San Francisco, convening thought leaders around these issues of urban sustainability, connectivity, and innovation. So I think we should start kind of at the 20,000 foot level and then zoom in to some more details and specifics as we move along in the session. But first I want to let our panelists give a little background on the work they're doing in this field, around about 5 minutes each, so you can get a little bit better sense of who we have here. So Mike is from GottaPark, which is a great example of a way that consumers are being enabled and empowered to make their own decisions around parking. And he's based in San Francisco. And Ben is from IBM, and I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their work. Ben, you want to start us off?
Sure. So Ben Stanley, I'm the automotive lead for the Institute for Business Value in IBM, and what that is I guess the best way to describe it is the think tank in IBM, looking in the different industries and cross-industry on what are the global trends that are happening, what's happening in technology, how the consumers are changing, and what are the real issues in the world, and then how can we develop perspectives that obviously drive our solutions that we talk to our customers about, but also get our customers and others thinking differently about some of the things that they're doing. Just as a side note, I also lead a small group. It's called it's the Automotive Center of Excellence in China. I live in Shanghai and have lived there the last 4 years. So what that's done is allowed me to, and when I talk today, really have more of a global perspective on what's happening in mature markets versus emerging markets and some of the trends that we're seeing in both of those areas and how getting around might be different based on the location.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Ben. I'm Michael Samoza. I'm the CEO and co-founder of GottaPark. My background is in user experience and product management. I've always loved designing software that's easy and enjoyable to use and solves real-world problems. It's intellectually challenging to take a real-world problem and come up with a technology solution. But what's really interesting to me is then when you add the human element. So then it's no longer just solving a problem, but it's solving your problem. So how can I make someone's day more enjoyable, more efficient, more rewarding by providing a great software service? And that's very inspiring to me. And that's what inspired us to start GottaPark, as it aims at solving one of the more painful human experiences, which is parking. In 2007, when we started GottaPark in San Francisco, there really weren't many parking solutions out there to help you find parking. And we figured there just has to be a better way. So GottaPark is an online marketplace for parking. allowing anyone to post available parking, setting their own availability and rates. So that includes commercial garages that want to bring spots online and make them visible and purchasable online. But it also opens up additional new models. So for instance, people could rent out their driveway, make a little extra money while they're at work. They could say 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, you can park in my driveway for $2. We saw a lot of other opportunities. Churches and schools always looking for ways to make more money, had great parking lots in the middle of cities, businesses, and so forth. So we really thought there was an opportunity to leverage space in a more intelligent way within cities, and to untap underutilized parking spaces in a way that could really be beneficial to individuals in the community and avoid building more parking structures. Within this discussions, there's a lot of great opportunities that are alternatives to driving. I'm sure we'll continue to expand and give people nice ways of avoiding driving and parking, but it's kind of a necessary evil that I'm sure we'll have for many years. So what's important is doing it efficiently, for the consumer, getting them to their destination quickly, avoiding a lot of congestion, people looking for parking, so it's less impact on the environment. So I'll just say maybe 3 kind of primary benefits. 1, it brings visibility into your options. 2, even if you know there's a parking space, but the 100 people ahead of you are going to take it, it's nice to be able to say, save me a spot, so there's a parking spot when you arrive. And lastly, just the unpredictability. Now in parking, you don't know if it's going to take you 5 minutes or 30 minutes to find a parking spot. So just to be able to know, exactly where you're going to park, how far that is to your ultimate destination to walk, you can really plan your time much more efficiently.
Great, fantastic. So we'll start kind of big picture and then kind of zoom into thinking about really how this is, how business models are changing, and we'll get into a little more nitty gritty. But first off, we've heard a lot about the connected vehicle, applications, new mobility options, and I want to just talk a little bit about how that's really impacting the individual consumer, and how are their mobility options changing because of all of this the connected world, the digital revolution. We have digital lifestyles. So maybe we can start with you, Ben.
Sure. Excuse me. So when we, in IBM, we've been spending a lot of time lately looking at really this consumer side of the equation. So, and especially how is the consumer life changing? And key to that is the use of digital technologies and how they've really changed the way that the consumers engage with the vehicle and others. And especially when you think about digital technologies like sensors, you can collect data from just about anything anymore. You can turn that data into information using analytics. Mobile devices, when I look around the world, in China, there's over 700 million people that have a mobile device now, so, which is more than twice the population of the US. So everybody is connected through their mobile devices. And then when you can take that information and give that to the consumer, and it's information about using the vehicle, and there's cases on whether you own it or not, but it's really how do you use a vehicle to move from one point to another, and then how do you integrate different modes of transportation in that movement. And the key thing that we are finding now, another component that's changing the game, is that people want personalization. They want all of this information, they want all of these options, they want all of these ways to move around in a way that supports their personal lifestyle. And so you start getting into other pieces of information, like maybe I want to be able to walk part of today. Although I'll tell you a little story. When I used to get in my car in the morning and go to work or go wherever, I might check the weather. Again, from China, it's a little different. Not only do I check the weather, but I check the pollution level, and I know what the PM level is every day.
I think you have a new mic.
I know what the PM level is every day. So even other pieces of information that you can use in your movement from one point to another is important.
Great, thanks. Mike, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, just expanding on that. I mean, I think one area, large area of impact is it allows us to make much more informed decisions. I mean, as Scott was talking yesterday with Rotify or services like Movil in Europe, being able to see all your different options for different modes of transportation, when the next train goes versus bus versus taking a taxi, renting a car to go. There's this kind of wealth of information, unprecedented richness of information on which to make very efficient choices for transportation. I think two other brief areas I'll touch on. One is safety, and the other is personalization. In safety, there's a lot of, everyone in this room, I'm sure, knows more than I there in terms of all the advancements in automotive industry for safety, which are really exciting. For instance, Mercedes-Benz Intelligent Drive, has like 360-degree cameras. It has radar to be able to detect cars in your blind spot. A whole suite of kind of collision prevention services, which are great. They even have, I think, 70 metrics that track your standard driving behavior. And when you start to alter from that, maybe due to fatigue or other things, they can detect that and alert you. So there's really so many new services out there that are proactive to avoid any kind of collisions, as well as if you're stranded or roadside or after a crash, there's beacons that can be sent out for help. So it's really the connected car is really, allowing you that you're no longer alone on the road. There's eyes. The technology is out there that's watching out for you, helping you, really in an interesting way. So I think that's a major impact of safety. And lastly is personalization. Some of the things Ben talked about, absolutely, and information within the car, informatics, infotainment is very important. But one kind of more subtle one is that we see in parking. The old model is you drive to a garage and you put cash in the machine, and the system doesn't know whether you've been there once or you go there every day. So as these transactions move online, then there's an identity behind that. And so for the consumer, it's nice in that you can get rewards, as the more you come. And also for the businesses, it can build some more stickiness. They can, reach out to their consumers and provide more value. Just one brief example on that, we're doing in San Francisco with Smart. Smart cars, they're very small. With valet, you can often fit 2 smart cars in one spot, or there's parts of the garage where smart cars can fit that a normal sized car does not. So through our app, you can book GottaPark. You can book parking for smart users. It knows that you're a smart driver and automatically gives you a parking discount. So based on your identity, you can get these kind of rewards. And I think that's another aspect of personalization that connectivity is bringing.
Great. I think he wants you to use that mic.
Okay.
Maybe quickly, if you could touch on how you're seeing these trends impact seniors versus young people, either with GottaPark or other trends you're seeing around this stuff.
Okay, great. In terms of seniors, one thing is just having that visibility. And maybe in the past, it's been more intimidating to go out if you don't know where you're going to be able to park, for instance, how far you're going to end up from your destination, especially if you have physical mobility problems. We saw that we've had a number of reviews from like operas and symphonies downtown, often have seniors going, and they really like the convenience of having that spot ahead of time, and just also the safety aspect. Where they've commented on it was scary before to take my purse out in a dark lot, put the cash into a box, and so if it's prepaid ahead of time, they just get out of their car and go to the symphony. It's much safer. So I think there's new opportunities to get that encourage seniors to get out in a more safe way. There's some things I think we'll talk later more about, like Lyft and Sidecar, UberX. These kind of peer-to-peer car sharing services. There, I think there's there are challenges that they're working through, as opposed to kind of traditional taxis that would be equipped, say, for wheelchairs, taking wheelchairs. Once you introduce people's personal cars, those kind of systems are not really set up. So I think there's need for growth in those areas to support seniors more effectively.
Yeah, interesting. I'm more excited to grow old in the current
Right.
in this conversation. Ben, you guys are coming out with the study. You're looking at 2025. Is there any? Can you give us any insight on how the life I might have as an older person at 2025 or versus now? How is it going to be easier, harder? What do you think?
One of the things we're looking at, again, focused on the customer or the user of the vehicle, is this notion of digital personas. So our thinking is, and others, is that someday, through the use of digital technologies, including cloud and other things, the whole argument about is something in the vehicle or on your smartphone or something goes away. Because now your digital persona, which is your likes and dislikes, your preferences in music, how the car is configured, where I want the seat to be, and other parts of your life, that is all part of your persona that follows you around, and using cloud technologies and things that can do that. And so what that does is it allows, again, when we think of this term, this notion of personalization, it allows people to get into a vehicle. It could be theirs or somebody else's. Get into a vehicle and really have the vehicle conform to their personal preferences. And if you think in terms of electronics in the future and things like that, highly configurable dashboards and center panels. Even today, through software, they can configure how the car rides, how it feels, how it steers, things like that. And then all the other digital things that can go with that. So when I think of it in terms of senior citizens, I think in terms of maybe having the safety, the car would recognize me when I walk up, through my fingerprint or something like that. So there's safety in being able to get in the car easily. When I get in there, maybe if you think of your Kindle or some kind of reader, you can change the text to make it bigger. They may be able to do that with the dashboard and some of the other controls that may be harder to see. And also some of the connected technologies around highly automated driving and things will then help with the safety aspect. You look at the other side on the younger people, again, safety and some of those other things, but then it brings some of their other personal preferences around social connections and things. All of this in terms of allowable preferences that meet all of the regulatory requirements. But this is something that we see in the mature markets, but it's also something we see in the emerging markets. And when I think of the emerging markets, although those of us that use cars for a long time, we might be really more comfortable using the knobs and things. But the younger generation and these emerging markets that are buying a vehicle for the first time, that are growing up using tablets and things, they're more comfortable with some of the other sliding and touching and other controls like that. So those markets are going to be very interested in some of these personalization techniques. And whether it's a mature market or emerging market, the digital technology is consistent across the board. As a matter of fact, some of the emerging markets are even farther along in digital. So we see these trends happening around the world.
Yeah, great. I have a family friend who has a 4-year-old, and she walked up to the TV the other day and tried to swipe it. So, this is we have a new generation of digital kids growing up. It's going to be different for them in the vehicle, or other mobility options. So, we're talking a little bit about how the consumer is changing. Maybe we could talk a little bit, Ben. Maybe you could touch on this: is how you're seeing these kind of silos breaking down between the consumer, the car maker, the technology provider. Is the consumer really driving demand now? Are you seeing that is an emerging trend of car makers have to answer now to the consumer? Or do you think the automakers are driving the consumer demand? Where does that relationship?
Well, I believe, again, it's from the consumer side. I mean, you're definitely seeing this interdependency and cooperation to some extent between the industries. They have to cooperate and they have to work together. It's still a challenge. I think industries haven't quite learned or found, necessarily the best way to do that. They need to, the interdependency between energy and electronics and automotive and government and everything, they're all there and they're all continuing to work together. I think if you look though at ecosystems, and this is where we're looking at in our next future study, if you look in terms of ecosystems, ecosystems traditionally have been built around products, and the OEMs, regardless of the industry, own that ecosystem. It's basically built on value that's up to the end product, and they pretty much tell the customers this is what you're going to have, through doing trying to give them what they want, but basically they're selling to segments. What we're seeing now with digital technologies and what people are asking for in mobility is that it doesn't necessarily fit easily in the electronics industry or the automotive industry or other industries. And so we're seeing this mobility ecosystem. I would also say there's a commerce ecosystem and other things that people want to do that don't necessarily fit into industries. And the consumer are driving these new ecosystems. And so the challenge is, and the opportunity is, that auto companies and others, they need to figure out how to fit into these new ecosystems. We hear about people not wanting to own cars. Well, they still want to use cars. And an interesting side note is that even though the shift in owning cars in the US is maybe going down with some of the younger generation or people moving into cities, in China, culturally, it's still very important to own a car, and they will still continue to buy cars. Now, the difference is they will still use public transportation during the week because traffic congestion and things, but they still want to have the best of both worlds. They want to have public transportation and they want to have their vehicle. So we really see this mobility ecosystem happening that is driven by the consumer. The value of being allowed to participate in that ecosystem is decided by the consumer, and it's offering some interesting opportunities for companies that don't necessarily work together to start providing services in that ecosystem. One example might be automotive companies hooking up with healthcare or something like that, again for senior citizens. So maybe through sensors and things in the vehicle, they can monitor my health. And I would opt into this. But there's an opportunity that if they can identify something that's happening with me, where I have certain conditions that I want to watch, the car can do that, and then they can send that information to some partner that can provide some type of health service for that. So this new ecosystem driven by the customer is going to change the way companies work together, but they still have to figure out how to fit in it.
Great. And Mike, you're kind of a great example of how that ecosystem is changing. You have a new partnership with Daimler, a car maker getting into the urban mobility space. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that. I think it's a great example of what Ben was just talking about.
Right. Absolutely, those silos are breaking down, especially with the connected car. It's no longer building a great car and, with the set of partners that they've had for many years. But now it's really connecting the car with the world and the environment around them. So it's a whole different set of partners that they need to reach out to, because they can't be, domain experts in every area, from, parking to restaurants and all these other entertainment services that they want to connect people to. So, it's been a very exciting last year. Daimler reached out to us and we started a strategic partnership. They're also helping fund GottaPark. Daimler is really looking at urban mobility in a very broad way. They started a subsidiary last January to bring all their various urban mobility services under one umbrella. So Car2Go is a car sharing service. They also have My Taxi, it's a taxi service. Movil, which is this kind of umbrella system to take you from A to B and gives you a list of all your options. And they definitely recognize the last component of that is those who are driving need to park. So parking is also a big critical piece of that urban mobility. So it was great, you know, that to see that such a, you know, large company reaching out to startups to kind of bring in you know, novel new ideas. They really liked the peer-to-peer aspect. That was the initial spark of our company, allowing people and businesses to post parking. So we've worked with them and built a mobile app and a web solution for Germany based on the GottaPark platform. And it's just kind of one of the first collaborations we've done. The example of Smart that we're doing in San Francisco is also another one. So it's a great learning experience for us. And you know, it's an interesting sign that automakers are reaching out and to other, you know, businesses that can bring value into the car from the outside.
Fantastic. And so you have a kind of opt-in service, right, where businesses can tie the GottaPark parking solution with like StubHub and others. Can you tell us more about how you've built a business model around that?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So yeah, when we started this, you know, we weren't sure. It's kind of a change in behavior. Will people go to, you know, online to book parking before they get in their car? So we also started looking at, you know, where are people already going, where parking is relevant. So for instance, event ticketing, you know, I'm going to buy a ticket. It's very natural. I know I'm going to be there for a finite set of time. I know whether I'm going to drive or not. At that time, do I want parking? So it's kind of, for kind of pre-planned cases where it's a discrete amount of time, it's kind of the ultimate user experience in that you don't have to re-enter all the context. So you're, say, on StubHub, we work with, you've bought an event ticket, we can pull all that information. We know the venue, you know where you're going to be. You know, it just says, here are your parking options, I want this one, and it can be included in a transaction very quickly, as opposed to going to a separate site, registering, entering all your credit card information again. So we're finding a lot of opportunities with that. I mean, I think ideally, in-car would be the perfect context, you know, where, again, you have the context, the car knows who the driver is. You can tie that to an account. You know, you entered your destination on your navigation, so you know where you're going. And now it's just, instead of just getting there and driving around looking for parking, it's like, here are your parking options near your destination. Which ones do you want? Do you want oversized? It knows your preferences. You know, that's a really nice way we can tie parking in. It's a great way for us to tap into large customer channels. And it's nice for businesses to extend the reach of their customer experience. Because, you know, if you go to a concert and you can't find parking and you're late, it affects your experience there. So we found a lot of receptivity to companies wanting to extend parking. And also, it's a new revenue stream for them. We do revenue share. So it's a win-win.
Great. Yeah, well, we both live in San Francisco, and it's only 7 by 7 miles, so there's only a certain amount of parking, and I live on the very western side of the city, and sometimes I'll go downtown. But if there's not a parking spot, I'm not really very excited to go downtown if I'm driving. So yeah, it really enables, it's essentially an economic development solution for cities as well. I mean, you can predict a little bit better how you know, your audience, the amount of people going to AT&T Park, for instance, which is a huge issue in San Francisco with the traffic. So let's move on to a little bit. You mentioned Lyft, Uber. This car sharing service is an interesting mobility solution of really enabling people to get where they want when they want. But Ben, let's go to you and talk a little bit about Uber just launched in China. What are you seeing as the uptake of Uber and the impact Uber is having on mobility options in China? And is it popular? Where do you see that car sharing or car service model going?
Yeah. So Uber just launched. It's cheaper to use Uber than it is to use a normal taxi. They're offering a subsidiary, reduced pricing to use them, and people like it. So they're able to call up the taxi and get it there. The interesting dynamic that's happening with it, though, it's causing problems with the rest of us that still stand on the corner and wave a taxi down. I don't remember how many taxis there are in Shanghai, but there are never enough. But it is there. They like it. It's able to give them the option to be able to get the taxi, and they also handle the transaction in the payment. So it's very convenient. And there are other apps in China. I know, along with taxis, one thing is predicting the cost. If you're a foreigner and you go there, you're probably going to get charged more than the trip was. So and even the locals have this problem. So there's metering apps to be able to help people know how much the cost should be from one point to another. And they're also starting to have some advancements around telling you when the buses will arrive, which I think they're a little bit behind in that aspect. So there are starting to get some interesting applications. And again, China moves very fast. Their growth in their mobile phone usage is amazing, and I don't remember the percentage, but it's in the thousands of % per year that they grow with mobile phone applications and internet applications, and so it continues to grow. And I think China will be an interesting place where some of these new mobility solutions and connected solutions that will be tested there, especially by the automakers, because there's a lot less red tape to go through to get the ability to try some of these things out. So we're seeing China and some of the other emerging markets as actually the first test bed of some of these capabilities.
Neat. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to add to that. It's also interesting. Earlier you were talking about the trend of reduction, especially with the younger generations of moving to alternatives to car ownership. But some of these, like the taxi services, these peer-to-peer taxi services, is kind of introducing a reverse trend. I heard recently Uber just secured like $2.5 billion in financing to open up 200,000 low-interest loans for people, anyone that essentially buys a new car and brings it into UberX, which is people using the taxi service with their own car. As long as they keep it for the lifetime of the loan, normally 4 years, then it's a much low interest loan. So, I think these are kind of some interesting options that are maybe making it for a younger generation where owning a car would be cost prohibitive. It's kind of bringing that down. So there's other trends that are encouraging car ownership, and similarly like the relay rides and get around where people actually rent out their cars. So there's ways, there's encouraging trends to not have to own a car, but there's also ways of, if you do choose to have a car, how you can kind of recoup some of that expense, which is interesting.
And more parking spots freed up when people use their cars to drive others around, right? Helps everybody out. So Mike, just quickly, do you expect your business model kind of to stay the same over the next 20 to 25 years? Or with all these taxi services that are coming out, is that a challenge for you? Or what's your long-term plan around GottaPark?
Yeah, 20 to 25 years is a long time. Things move
Maybe
very
have
quick.
another startup by then.
Yeah. I think, there will, as I said, I always see there will be a need for some parking and to be able to do it very efficiently. I would say we're just at the very cusp of that industry. There's a lot of growth we can do. I think parking will always kind of fall into two categories, kind of the pre-planned case. And I do think that there will be more of this integration with other services. It's a very, as an ancillary service, it's very tied in as event ticketing or travel, where you're booking your travel and you can have a parking near your hotel or near your airport. I think there will be, further integrations as well as into the car and navigation apps. But then kind of the ad hoc, I think there, there's really an opportunity for it to change the game significantly, where I see, the majority of transactions happening online. Through it identifies you. It's a very seamless payment. You drive in, drive out. You get loyalty rewards, as opposed to sitting and sticking your cash in a box. So really, it's the whole industry is changing in that it's moving from on-site to online. And then I think we can also look at other industries like, say, hotel or airlines. In the old days, we probably paid the same price for any seat in the airplane. But nowadays there's all these different segmentation, and I think the same will happen with parking, where people may pay a little more premium to park right at the entrance, have maybe a little wider spot so people don't ding their car. So there's going to be a lot of variety there, and people being directed to a specific spot within a garage, and there's different pricing within the garage to really monetize the garage more effectively. And those that want to go to the 5th floor, get a discount. So I do see a lot changing. And in terms of the business models, I think whether you're reserving a space ahead of time, say for the World Series, right next to the door, you're going to pay a premium. But for kind of just day use, it's going to be very small margins on top of just general traffic, because it's going to be part of the norm and not just kind of exception. I'm going to reserve a spot for a very specific event.
Great. We only have about 3 minutes, but I wanted, Ben, last question for you is, we've heard a little bit in the last session about data privacy. We're all going online. GottaPark's a great example. Enter all your information, stub with when you're buying your event ticket, reserving your parking. Is data privacy, is it actually a big issue, or are we overreacting? And at IBM, what are your guys' thoughts about this, and what can we do about it?
Data privacy is an issue. It's a big issue. I think there's always the option to opt in and give up data, and people are willing to give data up for certain situations, especially if they get some value in return. We are looking at that area, and especially when you think of the data, the huge amount of data that's going to be generated between vehicles, between people, especially when you think in terms of who owns it. How do you collect all that data? How do you cleanse it? How do you get the right data to the right people? And how do you make sure you follow the personal rules that says that you can give up certain data are going to be very important topics, and it's still being worked on, so there is no good answer. But it is important. Certain countries have certain rules, so there's even certain data that you cannot collect or do. But there is a huge opportunity with the data too. As long as you're not giving up personal information, there's a lot of information and analytics that can be done on the bulk of the data, keeping the personal pieces out of it, especially when you think in terms of location-based marketing and other things that can happen as you're moving around. So there are issues and things that need to be solved, but there are plenty of opportunities when you start collecting that data.
Great. Thanks you guys so much for this, Mike, Ben. Hope you guys got something out of this, and TV audience as well. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie and panelists. We have a very